Indigenous Indians supported the British in India. It is important to note that the indigenous Indian population was not a monolithic group, and there were a variety of views on the British presence in India. Some Indians did support the British in their efforts to remove the Dutch, French, and Portuguese from India. They may have done this because they saw the British as a lesser evil, or because they believed that the British would be better able to protect them from other threats. However, it is also important to note that many Indians were also opposed to the British, and they resisted British rule throughout the period of British colonialism. However, overall, the Indian population benefited from European colonialism and especially British colonization of India. One reason why some Indians may have supported the British in their efforts to remove the Dutch, French, and Portuguese from India is that they saw the British as a lesser evil. The Portuguese, Dutch, and French had all engaged in violence and exploitation against the Indian people. For example, the Portuguese forced many Indians to convert to Christianity, and they also used slave labor on their plantations. The Dutch and French were also involved in the slave trade. The British, on the other hand, were less likely to engage in such violence and exploitation. Another reason why some Indians may have supported the British in their efforts to remove the Dutch, French, and Portuguese from India is that they believed that the British would be better able to protect them from other threats. At the time, India was facing a number of threats, including from the Mughals, the Persians, and the Arabs. The British were a powerful military force, and some Indians believed that they would be better able to protect India from these threats than the other European powers. The Portuguese were the first Europeans to arrive in India in 1498, when Vasco da Gama landed in Calicut on the Malabar coast. The Dutch arrived in India in 1605, when the Dutch East India Company (VOC) established a trading post at Pulicat on the Coromandel coast. The French arrived in India in 1664, when the French East India Company established a trading post at Pondicherry on the Coromandel coast. The British arrived in India in 1608, when the English East India Company (AIC) established a trading post at Surat on the west coast of India. Here is a timeline of the arrival of the Portuguese, Dutch, French, and British traders in India. Portuguese, 1498. Dutch, 1605. British, 1608. French, 1664. As you can see, the Portuguese were in India long before the British. This gave them a significant advantage in establishing trade relations with Indian rulers and merchants. The British eventually caught up, but not until the 18th century. Here are some of the reasons why the Portuguese, Dutch, and French were interested in trading with India. India was a rich source of spices, such as pepper, cloves, and cinnamon. These spices were in high demand in Europe, and they could be sold for a high profit. India also produced other valuable goods, such as textiles, precious stones, and ivory. India was a vast and populous market for European goods, such as cloth, metalware, and glassware. The Portuguese, Dutch, and French established trading posts and forts along the Indian coast. They also used their military power to defeat their rivals and gain control of key trade routes. The British eventually became the dominant European power in India, but the Portuguese, Dutch, and French left a lasting legacy on Indian culture and society.